Last time on Moto therapy, I rolled over from Colorado into Utah in the La Salle Mountains and hung between a couple of aspens for a lovely evening. Next morning I got up and did some maintenance and rolled out towards Moab. This was my first experience camping on BLM with cows. And here I'm exploring the desert just south of Moab, heading north. And it was extraordinary, the change from the aspens in the mountains to just a few miles away being in the desert and the scrub like you're seeing here. Not much wildlife in this area as compared to the mountains just a few miles away, but that's what makes the Moab area so extraordinary. These deep canyons on one side of the mountains, and then just a few miles climbing up into the mountains. You're in a completely different world, and that's why I recommend anybody that's interested in the Grand Canyon should compare it to the Moab area. You've got Canyonlands, you've got arches, you've got mountains, you've got all kinds of activities that you can do, unlike the Grand Canyon, which is basically just hiking. Hiking with a lot of rules. Go to Canyonlands and compare the two. I hope to make a video on the comparison of the two, because Canyonlands just blows the Grand Canyon away as far as I'm concerned. Mainly because of access, but the beauty of the canyon and your ability to get down in it is just, it's night and day. It's kind of like looking at a picture and then being in a picture. It's two completely separate things. So I decided to explore the canyon that I had discovered the day before. I believe the canyon is known as Jug Handle Canyon because on the river at the bottom of the canyon is an arch known as Jug Handle Arch. So if you come up this canyon, I would believe it's a county maintained road. It's shocking. This trip was my first trip down this canyon, but after coming back many times since then, this is the best condition this road has ever been, which is the only reason I got as far as I did on this road with this monster machine, because this is more of a very scenic and rugged Jeep road. It's not really rugged in all parts. It's very passable except in 2 or 3 sections which have pretty big giant steps and boulders, depending on the time of year apparently, because it looks like it's well maintained during the summer, but at the end of summer apparently they just let this thing go, and the Jeeps come in here and tear all the dirt out that's covering the boulders, and you really have to have a pretty good bike with some decent suspension and a lot of skill to get up some of these steps and get around some of these larger rocks that are in the trail. But I did manage to get down to a very iconic rock that has fallen onto the road, and lucky for everyone, you can see the rock and crawl under it with your Jeep if you want to. but since that section was very rugged and rocky getting up under that rock, I decided rather than disable my vehicle and perhaps my body, I would turn around. But man, this is a great canyon. This is one of many of the visually amazing canyons around the area, and it's a little bit tricky on a big bike with street tires, basically. It's not as slick as the other places that I have fallen down, and you will see one of those places towards the end of this video. A very slick mountaintop with very steep incline. This is not one of those. Traction is usually pretty good around Moab. It's very sandy, but it's pretty good grip depending on where you're at. If the sand is on top of a flat piece of rock, not so much. Man, this is so much fun riding around. It was so hot that day. Didn't have a lot of water with me, and I didn't want to bash myself up against the side of a canyon in my bike. So I turned around on this county road that has road signs on it, believe it or not. This is an amazing trip. But definitely have your tires and your suspension in order if you want to make this journey up or down. I would say maybe come up. Sitting here in a campground, pretty cool campground. Nice little hill on top of the plateau, just above Moab, Utah, and it's got a nice view, as you can see. The canyons, the big ones are over there, the ones that look like the Grand Canyon. But I actually went down in one of the canyons today, and it was work. A lot of sand, a lot of big rocks, a lot of struggling. Camped out in the desert last night, and it was a lot of fun, even though it was fairly windy. The problems I had were due to the fact that there's nowhere to stake the tent down, so I had to use rocks. I guess I probably could have put the stakes in the ground and covered them with rocks, but the rain fly kept coming loose and making noise. But that was after it started raining, so I had to get up in the middle of the night. Really was hoping to watch the stars all night, but it was a little bit stormy. Stars finally came out after it rained, and got a few pictures, but overall it was pretty cool sleeping in the desert. Even with a 15-mile-an-hour wind all night, I probably could have slept till probably 4 or 5 in the morning in relative comfort, given the fact that I didn't wear any socks. I mean, it was nice. I mean, it's kind of like being in being in your house with a fan going, air conditioning blowing. Of course, your feet are going to get cold if you don't have any blanket or anything. But it was nice, and I would do that again. Kind of hate to be leaving, but it's got to be moving on. See what else is out there. Wow, Canyonlands. I could spend weeks, months probably, exploring this place. It's got so much going on. I mean, with a ride bike, I can ride all out there forever. I mean, I'll probably get in trouble, but but I could ride out there forever. And this is some amazing stuff, and I bet a lot of it nobody's seen in a while. It was just such a treat to be able to ride around and camp in the Moab area for a couple of days. The iconic red rock and the canyons, you just can't find anything quite like this anywhere else in America, at least. They're just everywhere. Even on pavement, it's quite an experience. These tar snakes were a little bit scary. We've got tar snakes back in the southeast too, but not quite as hot and slippery as these things. The first few times I hit them in a corner, I kind of got a little bit of a oh shit moment, but started to get used to them and started to realize that they only slip a little bit. It's not like oil slicks. It's just a an inch or two of slip, but still get your attention. But riding into the sun like I was here. It's one of those things I'll never forget. Passing these huge monolithic structures all over the canyons, and then riding out into the flatter sections of Utah is still even extraordinary then. There's just so much amazing geology in this state. And given that it's not what most people would consider a beautiful place, most people, including me, think, or at least I used to think, that beauty was green. Green and blue and, brown and red desert things just aren't beautiful. But since this trip started me off on the idea, changing my ideas of what beauty is, it certainly has come full circle since my last visits to the desert, and I have grown to appreciate the phenomenon and the beauty of the desert. You can't really see the geology where everything is green and lush. You can't see the rocks. You can't see very far even. Sometimes you can't see the next mountaintop because you're covered in a blanket of trees and leaves, and that's one of the things that I came to discover the last couple of trips out west, is being able to see to the next mountaintop has some real advantages to it. And in this case, in the desert of Utah, you can see many mountaintops if you get high enough away. Watching the geology riding down the highway, I decided to do some exploration and see what these mounds were. I wanted to get a closer look, so I took some of the dirt to get a little bit closer to the mounds that I'd been seeing for miles and miles, and take a closer look and see if I could get on top of one. Well, I'm standing on top of one of these, I'll find out what they're called, but they're all over the place, these mounds. And I saw one just outside of Green River, Utah, that looked like motorcycles had been carving it, and one actually jumped up onto the I don't know if it's called a Mesa or Plateau. Anyway, one of the motorcycles had jumped up onto the plateau where a radio tower was. I thought that was pretty cool. It was an early jump. But just looking at the tracks, it looked like it was a lot harder than it is. I mean, hard as in platform. But when I got up on it, I found out it's real soft, almost like a clay sand kind of thing. And either that or I'm too fat and my bike's too heavy. But anyway, I was going to try to get up on top of that. I thought that would be a cool picture, but that's where it's staying right now. On my way north to Salt Lake, I spied some very interesting hills and a peak. But more importantly, I saw this dirt road that obviously had access to the tops of these peaks. So I turned around, took this gravel dirt road to the top. Really didn't have much trouble down on the flatter portion, but as I rose to the top, I realized how slick this sand and powdery substance that was covering the road was. I didn't have a lot of slipping down below, but as the road became steeper at the top, the talcum powder that was covering this road became slipperier and slipperier. And I had a real problem just about here when I started getting to these switchbacks. And you can see that the road is getting steeper at this point. And this is where I really started having some trouble. Slipping and sliding and almost dumping the bike on the way up. I thought for a second that maybe I should turn around, but there was no real trick to the road. It was just really, really slick. Once I reached the crest, I realized why I had initially been so inquisitive As I rolled back down, the thought in my mind was, okay, it's a little bit steep, but more importantly, it's very, very slick. So I started slowing down here and realized that not only did I not have traction going up, I didn't have traction going down, and I was sliding here. This talcum powder is just amazing how slick it is, and I almost had no front brake on because the front was washing out. So I just tried to creep along as slowly as I could, and I even put my feet down here to try to give me a little bit. It was like riding on snow or ice almost. It was almost as slick as ice, but definitely wet, slick, snowy road. It was deadly slick, and I'm creeping down here with my left foot poking down the road to try to keep my balance since I'm just barely moving. And I am probably 15 feet from a switchback here, so I'm much more concerned about slipping off the side of this mountain than I am dropping the bike, and I almost do that. At a point here going forward, the bike just starts slipping, and I've got really no other choice other than just to try to ride it out. And as I got to the bottom, you will see the rear washes out on me, and I almost slide off the face of the cliff. It was pretty exciting. I don't think I will be going up here. There I am, just sliding, and I just get the momentum, and the rear washes out here just before I pitch off the edge. And if I do ever come back here, it will be with much knobbier tires and maybe something lighter too. Pretty exciting trip up the side of this mountain, and it was all worth it. But I learned my lesson about that bentonite clay that's everywhere out here, all the volcanic remnants. But then I got back on the highway and headed north to Salt Lake. Join me next time as I ride across the Great Salt Lake and head towards the Bonneville Salt Flats. Pretty amazing video. Stay tuned. See you then.